Hi everyone, I'm from Everything and Everywhere. Today the topic is regarding 2D tracking concepts in Nuke. So here in this video we'll be learning the basic concepts of 2D tracking, where to place the tracking point and how to deal with these settings. So let me open a sample video which I can share in our description. So let's import the shot first. So I have this example here. By the way, while importing, you can see the shot length is around 1 to 100 frames. I've created this very basic exercise in After Effects playing with three solids and rendered out as a image sequence in JPG form. When you click on this little arrow, you can see what it has actually. So we can just play and see there are three solids doing basic motion of position for the first solid on top, the second solid is scaling up, and the third solid is rotating. Let's click on open and we have our shot with us. Before we connect even with the viewer, on the right side we can see the resolution is set to 2K 2048 by 1556, and so does my project. So we don't need to set the project. I've selected the node and press 1 to connect to the viewer. And the best part is we can start without setting up a project. Generally, if you have to set a project, you have to hit the S key on the keyboard, keeping your mouse cursor on the node graph. But here the resolution is matching with the settings, so we don't have to do that. However, if your resolution is not matching, if you are dealing with any other shot, you need to hit the S key on the keyboard and then you can change the settings matching with your shot. I'll keep the default because that's what I've rendered to ease the process of tracking immediately. So I'll clear the properties and then go to tracker. So hit the tab key on the keyboard and then type tracker. The tracker node is for 2D tracking. It does not have planar track, but it does have point tracking. And as soon as you have tracker properties enabled, you will see on the viewer we will get a lot of options for the tracking. So if the property is not there, you won't see any tracking options. As soon as I connect and double click to enable the properties, you will again get the node activated where all the options for tracking are available. So first thing first you have to do is playing a shot in the viewer and check what you have to track. Here I'm creating a basic exercise where I'm adding three checkerboards on all three solids matching with the same motion, explaining you the concepts of 2D tracking where we will be learning position, rotation and scale. The first top solid is just animated from left to right. So here we have to track the position. If you look at the second solid, the one in the middle, it has the scaling in and out. So here we have to track based on 2 points, because 1 point is enough for position movement, but if you need to track two you need to track if scale and rotation, then you need 2 points at least to understand how far they are going between each other over the time, and that's how it calculates. Or on the third one, if you see, we will add 2 points and the position of both points will understand how they are rotating in terms of degree, so we'll get the rotation. So 1 point is enough for position, but if you are tracking scaling and rotation, you need 2 points. So let's see. I'll stop it and start now. So first of all, there are a couple of ways to add track point. You can write on the right side, you can add track, it will add here. keep adding, and it will keep on adding the points over here. I can select all and click on delete to delete all of them. There is another way. You can go to the left side, click, and then click wherever you want. It will add the point on a area where you are left clicking. So I can add until unless I deactivate this. I can select all and delete it. The one which is my favorite is zooming in and then holding the Control Alt key. And this will allow us to add wherever I want. It will temporarily activate this option, and when you release the Control Alt key, it will deactivate. I'll mention all these shortcuts which I'm using in our video in our description so that you can have a look. So now what next I'm going to do is, basically these are the solids, so they are easily understood where is the dark and the bright areas. But in general, I must say that I do a quality check of finding out which are the best available points for tracking in 2D. So the areas which has the most contrast is the good point. The areas which is sharp is a good point. The area which remains more or less available in the frame is a good point for tracking. So here it's quite easy to understand that we have to track this solid. I'll place the tracking point even in the center or at the corner. Both way it will work. But while tracking with the scaling or rotation, it will cause problems. So I'll start with the corner to find the best contrast. So holding Control Alt, left click, and you will come up with two windows. One inside the inner square defines the pattern, and the second, the outer one, defines the search area. Remember, both are important in terms of their size, the width and height. The pattern area defines the what pattern it has to look for. So I'm telling Nuke that this is the pattern you have to look out for. On the left hand side you can see this is the pattern. And the search area is the area where this pattern has to be looked out when you do the automatic tracking. The reason is the search area, if it is quite big enough, then it will take more time, and if you increase more than what it is required, you will end up having different tracks and inconsistent track due to the fact that the same pattern can be available in a different search area as well. So avoid increasing it too much or making it too small. Both ways are incorrect. Keep it on an average size so that it finds the enough search area for looking out this pattern. I always check 4 to 5 frames next, 4 to 5 frames back to see if my search area is big enough or not. So I can see 4 to 5 frames, the search area. Within the search area, there is my pattern. So I feel this search area is big enough to deal with this tracking. So to start with analyzing forward, there are a couple of ways. There are three ways to analyze forward. One is frame by frame, which is most accurate as per my observation. The one is the track to end, meaning that the first frame all the way to 100, or you can specify a range. This is quite useful when your tracking pattern is going off a screen or being hidden by some other pattern. Then I give a particular range. But at the moment we are sitting on first frame and I need to track forward, I'll click on forward. But there are times when we have to track somewhere in middle like 50th frame or 60th or 65. Then you need to track in both direction, backward tracking, forward tracking. But at the moment we have to just go forward tracking. So let's click on forward track. There is a shortcut which is V key on the keyboard. You can do that way as well. So click on forward track. We have to wait, and there is a progress bar. If you want to get rid of this progress bar on top, I always keep on the right side window progress, and this way the progress bar will always be come on the right side so that I can see my pattern is tracking perfectly fine or not. Instead of looking at the right side On the viewer, I always look at on the top left where I can see the tracking is going good or not. So here, as I can see, the way I have started, it was always in the corner, and the way we have ended was there in the corner. That means my tracking is quite nice. I can move forward now. Remember, there are traffic lights which allows us to find the tracking data. I don't much rely upon this until unless I see drastic movement over here. Remember, you can hold the shift key and then you can zoom even further to check your zoom view on the top left. Lift the shift key. You can expand from this corner as well to check how good your tracking was. So I'll play and it will update live and show you how the tracking was done. So I don't much rely upon it. If you see, there is a red mark over here. If I reach to this area, it says there is a slight change. However, I feel it's not much required as of now until unless I'm doing a clean frame or a paint task or anything which has to be matched on a pixel level. At the moment, I'll just be say okay. Let's decrease the size of the zoom view and then we can continue. On the top, it will show you wherever you have added manual keyframes. So we have started from first frame, so it will show up here. Now what next? We have our track data, and when you play, it says it is in the motion as the pattern is moving. So let's do the next thing. The next thing I wanted is to add a checkerboard. So I'll hit the tab key and find the checkerboard. And this is I want to add with my tracker. Remember, the tracker can be used itself as a match move node. However, I don't recommend because in the studio where I've worked, never it was told to use tracker directly until unless and on exceptional occasions. So I will not use tracker as my match move node or a node to finalize. I'll export this data and connect to the checkerboard. So double click on the tracker and on the right side you will find the export menu. I'll find the right suitable option which is transform match move. I will not go with the baked information. I'll tell you why. The baked information really means whatever changes you do in the tracker node, it will not match with it will not update to the transform match move node. So let me explain quickly. If I create on transform match move and hit the create, you will see it is linked with the expression. However, in the tracker node, if you go to transform match move baked and if you hit the create button, all the tracking data is applied or baked information in the transform match move. But if you make any changes in the tracker node, it will update here because it is still linked, but here it is just animated. You can zoom in and see it says A, which means it contains the animated properties. However, if you make any changes to tracker node, it will not update since it's the baked information. But in this one, it is linked with an expression, and that's why it defines as E, meaning whatever changes you do in the tracker node, it will update live on the match move. So when you're satisfied with the tracker node data, you don't have to make any changes. Match move is the right option, but if you're unsure, use the linked option, which is the transform match move, not the baked one. So I'll delete this one and connect to my checkerboard and view it. So when you view, you will see the checkerboard is visible. When we go to first frame, the checkerboard is visible completely, and when you hit the play button, you will see the checkerboard is going out. What I have to do as of now, I have to stop and see the checkerboard. I want to place a slightly smaller than the white solid which is here. I want to place somewhere in this area to my checkerboard, but the checkerboard is quite big. So one thing comes into my mind is, first of all, I can't see both. So to do that, I need to use a merge node. And to remember the merge node, I always use one basic example. I always keep A as a foreground, but not always. I remember the node operations like this: A over B. So I want to be A input as my over to the B, whatever you connect with the B. So A, just checkerboard over B. B is my the short. Now remember, when whether you connect with the B as with your tracker or the short, it won't make a difference. When you view now by using the merge node as a viewer, we will see the short is connected and we can see the solids behind. The problem is the checkerboard is too large in size. One thing which we get quickly in our mind is let's add a transform. So if I add a transform now and resize, it looks good on size, and let's go to the first frame and I'll place it here slightly even smaller by decreasing the scale. You can even decrease by holding Alt middle mouse click left and right. This is one way. Or we can left click on the particular decimal or the before decimal, also use up and down arrows by mouse the keyboard up and down arrows or the mouse wheel up and down. So I need to decrease in increments, and I believe this size is quite enough. Remember, on-screen controls uh, on-screen controls are also quite helpful. You can go to these corners where the cross arrows are coming in diagonal. This will allow us to scale. The larger line will allow us to rotate, and the center one allows you to adjust the position. There is one more thing, you can adjust the scale uh, only in horizontally or the vertically. So this one is horizontal and this one is vertical, and if we hold the uh, you know if we adjust this value by handling these handles over here, it allows us to skew in a particular direction. So it has all the controls, and if you have to adjust the anchor point, hold the control key and you can adjust the anchor point. The one quick way to reset is you can click here and choose set to default. But remember what happened is it not just put the default to the this one, but also the position. So how you can reset quickly the anchor point? So whenever you are making changes to control key, the one and easy way to do that is the resolution. The resolution is set to 2048 by 1556. So we can set 2048 divided by 2 and 1556 divided by 2. So when I've changed the transform adjusted to the solid, sorry, not the solid, the checkerboard, you will see while playing, it's moving actually. It's not like it's not moving, but look at the difference what we are making out in the curve editor if we could get um, in the transform match move. So here's the difference when we hit the F key on the keyboard in the translate X and Y. The thing is, it's not able to move to a certain position. We cannot adjust keyframes because it's linked. That's what the big data will allow us to do, to select those keyframes. This is all linked with the tracker node. So what is happening here? It's moving only till that far, around 1500 because of the transform. But if I disable this and show you the curve data one more time, it makes no difference as of now. So the real difference what we are getting here is the transform match move data is doing its job by playing it, but the problem is After adding a transform node, when you adjust the position, that's all fine, but when you scale it down, you are actually scaling down the data as well. And that scaled down data is allowing the overall translation to move by the value which is 0.05. So that really means if I take a backdrop node just to show you, if your pixel motion is between 1 to 200, I mean 1 pixel to 200 pixel after tracking from A to B point, from A to B point, adding a transform node afterwards, the problem is you're scaling it down, and when you're scaling it down, the data is being multiplied by a number which is 0.045. So 200 pixel is multiplied by 0.045 and the result is only 9 pixel. So earlier the thing which has to move to 200 pixel is now multiplied by 0.045. Not this one, sorry, not the dot here, but over there. So if you see the transform node, 0.05 is being multiplied and the result we are getting is only the 9 pixel, and that's causing the problem. So keep that in mind. Adjust only the image, the source, not the track data. So we have to adjust its position. There are a couple of ways to detach a node and connect it here. One is you can shake. So you can shake and disconnect. Remember, the shake depends on how much you have set in the preferences. So that will come up, or else yeah, it should be somewhere here, unconnect output arrow length. It should be somewhere here, which as far as I know. But the one which I prefer is Control Shift X and connect here. Or the quicker way is you can hold the control key and use the control key plus the up arrow, so it changes its position. You see this? So it's jumped to here, and let's align and delete the data. To add a dot, I'm holding the control key, by the way, to introduce dots in between, or you can simply add a dot node, a full stop node, to create a dot on an empty space. So now my checkerboard is smaller one and the data is untouched, not multiplied in this way. So we are getting the real numbers, and this is what we have done for the first track. I know it's too lengthy in terms of explanation, but it's quite important for the fundamentals of tracking while using the node graph. The second one, I'll take another tracker node. So what I generally do to maintain the hierarchy, this is my source, I'll keep it on top, and this is my element. So I'll keep it somewhere here. I frequently use backdrop nodes, but this is just a tutorial to explain the node graph. So I'll use a little bit of backdrop quickly so that we can understand what we are doing. So this is our tracking test. So I'll call this as test shot for tracking. Let's increase the font size. I'm using the spacebar key to expand the panel which I'm interested in. So you need to keep your mouse cursor on the panel and hit the spacebar key. So this is our test shot for tracking. and then this area checkerboard is the element. We sometimes call it as placeholder as well, so we can name it as placeholder to check first. There are quite a lot of times in our studio while working, you don't get the element because it is either being built up by a graphic designing team or a motion graphic team or a, a designing team or maybe a matte paint or maybe it is a clean frame by the prep team. So you won't get it immediately until unless you can check your tracking by using a placeholder. I often use it as checkerboard as my placeholder, but even the studio provides their testing placeholders as well. So next thing we will do is use the another tracker. Let's mention this is for position tracking. So I'll add one more backdrop. Mentioning here is the position tracking. I'll keep this in bold, slightly down. Now next we have to add another tracker. I can hold the control key to create one more dot. And let's do one more thing. Let's put it slightly on this side. Where I'll keep the dots, and then we will have the test shot slightly to the left. Alright, I'll add one more tracker, connecting it to the original shot. So you can easily understand by selecting a tracker, the highlighted pipe is showing you that it's going to the original shot. Now I need to track this shot. And what's the best way to track any pattern? Suppose anything, mostly it happens in the number plate or any signboard or any screen you are tracking. Remember screen, I won't use 2 points, I'll use 4 points because I need to calculate perspective as well. But if any element is coming in towards the camera without any perspective shift, I'll use 2 points, and the best frame to start with is the one which is the closest to the camera. So in our case, the first frame is not the right frame, it's the 100th frame. As you can see, on the 100th frame, it is close to the camera, it is larger one. So I'll start with the 100th frame for tracking. Remember, for scaling or rotation, we need 2 points. So I'll hold Control Alt left click, Control Alt left click. Now having a second tracker, I am going to place it on each corner because we need to go for a scale, and we are on the 100 frame because that's the where the pattern is closest to the camera. And suppose if you have any sort of pattern, even though it is closest to the camera, but the amount of motion blur or defocus is there, go for the sharpest frame, and that is also helpful in tracking. So here I'm going to adjust the pattern and the search area. Similarly over here, the search area. And in the settings of the tracker, I will do one more thing is to mention in the auto tracking that the pattern is not just translating but also scaling. So I'll say translate and scale both. I'll switch to tracker. And if the one which is highlighted as track 2, it will only track based on track 2, but I want to track both. So I'll select both of them and then go to backward track. tracking is done, as we can see, and it has done pretty nicely. And why we needed two tracks? Just consider this one point. Suppose if we are dealing with just one point, it will go in x direction, which is left and right, and also in y direction, it's going down. So combining together, you will only get the position data. But when you have 2 points, what it will do, it will calculate how they are getting away from each other as soon as the frame progresses. And this will allow the tracking data to give the scale information. And that's why we need 2 points when we are tracking the scale pattern. So I'll go to tracker 2. Again, I'll use the match move, which is for linked, create. And this time I'll use, and this is why I personally prefer the node-based softwares are quite better than the non-node based, which are the layer based, because you have taken the element one time and you don't have to take it again and again. If I have to place the same placeholder over here on the second one, I can connect the transform match move here and then use the merge node. I'll put A over B, so this is my new match move as A and the previous merge as my B. I will hold the control key to refine the layout of the node graph. Remember, this transform will place the new the new checkerboard over there. So when you view it, you will see this is the new checkerboard, and it is moving because we are using only one data, that is the position. So I will add a transform node and reposition this over here. But the problem is, still, even after using two tracks, I'm not getting the right scale. The reason is, in the tracker node, by default, what does Nuke do? Even though if you add 10 points also, it will use for tracking but not for exporting until unless you specify it. So how you will specify? From the track point 1, we are not just using position data but also scale. But let's add both points with the track data first. So by adding track data for both points, what it will do, if I just adjust my transform to a little more towards the center, see that's what it's going to do. So when I go to back and play, you will see it's doing nothing right now. The reason is, the position of the top left and the position of the bottom right are counter attacking each other in terms of the pixel motion, and that's why it's not able to move in any of the direction, because you are using both transform data. It wants to go towards the top left, but the second one is going the same pixel value to the top bottom right, and that's why it's not able to move even a single pixel. So this is, you will see something unique, that even we have applied the data, but just because we are using only position data, the translate data of both, and it is inverting the same data as one we have on the top left, and that's why it's not able to move. So in that case, we need to say we just don't need position but also scale. We can go to tracker 2 and we will say the scale information, and when I play, you will see we are now getting a scale. So even though I will not take the translate data from one, only the second tracker is used for scale and the first one for position, we have our information. Even though we don't need the transform data, if I disable right now, right, you will see something strange, that a scale is being used but not as an anchor point. It is used only for one point. So if I turn on for both the scale, it will do the job because it's only scaling, not translating. So both the scale will allowing us to replace it on the center, and then we are getting a right data. So we have fixed the second one. All we need to do is add a backdrop. I always feel adding a backdrop is like communicating your script, communicating with the artist with your script. So I'll add as position and scale, or I'll keep it everything in caps. And now we need the third tracker. So I'll keep this as well all the way here. And now I need another tracker for the third operation. And this time, again, any pattern which is in angle, it's quite better that if you have a pattern which is quite parallel to the ground. So if it is possible, avoid having angular patterns. Wait and see where it is more of parallel to the ground. They are quite helpful for Nuke to understand what sort of pattern it is. So I will not go for any frame. If I'm left with no option, of course, then I need to fix a frame. But if I have an option to find a state pattern, then I'll go for that. Here we don't have any, position and scaling, only the rotation. So I'll go with the tracker. Again, with the rotation, I need 2 points. So I'll apply on the top left, increase the descent size, and the bottom right. Sometimes in Nuke, when you have set the properties panel to 10, it causes problem. You need to clear other properties. I'm keeping only one so that the one which is latest is opened and others are not. It speeds up my process. I'll select both. Before I jump to tracking immediately, I'll do one more thing is the settings. I told you before, settings are quite important before you quickly go for analyzing a track. Define what sort of movement for this pattern is. So under the auto tracking, we know it's not just translating. I mean, it is basically rotating. So we'll say translate with rotate. And then I'll switch to tracker. And then we will go to analyze forward. So oftentimes I've seen the new users working with Nuke, um, uh, you know, thinks that the settings are actually here. They are not for settings while tracking. They are for export settings. The settings for the tracker itself is in the settings. So before track settings are in this tab, and after export, if you need to make any changes, I mean, before export, if you have to make any changes, go for these settings. So whether they are disabled or enabled at the moment, they won't make a difference. They will make a difference when you are exporting it from here. So keep that in mind. So I might need to refine, but as of now, it's going so far so good and tracking pretty nicely. And when I go back and play, you will see they are all connected, understanding the pattern movement and then rotating super fine. Again, I will use my same placeholder. I'll delete this and then tracker with the transform match move for create. I don't know, I've clicked for double time, and then I need to connect this as my checkerboard, and this time we'll have a merge node where A will be my new match move over B will be my previous merge. And when I view it, you will see we have the third checker over there. I need to add one more transform so that I can place it. Now I'll just move it toward here and then go to first frame and then try to place it towards the center. When I go back and play, you will see it's just having position. Like you don't have to zoom in and check for the rotation, but also even the tracker will tell you this transform match move will tell you the rotation is set to 0, means still we are not calculating the rotation. So to calculate rotation, all we need to do is go to my tracker node and say the second point is useful for rotation. And when you play, you have the rotation now. And that's what we needed. So when I clear the properties and expand, we have all three checkers doing its job the way we wanted. The one is changing its position, same to the solid, another one is scaling up, and the third one is rotating. One more thing I always do, which I've seen in so many of the work, that we need to ensure that once you're done with your tracking, always enable the motion blur. So I'll put one in the motion blur for all three so that it matches the same motion blur as the one we have. You can adjust these settings by using the shutter value. It is set to 0.5, which means 180-degree shutter. You can adjust matching with the camera motion, but enable the motion blur. That's what I would do. Especially if you see here on the first one, if I don't give motion blur, it looks like this. So I'll give motion blur. I know this is too much, so I can adjust by adjusting the shutter. So even little bit is okay, but it has to be there. I'll clear the property and check one more time. So we have our first video. I'll add chapters so that it will be helpful for you to go to a particular section. Let me know in the comments if you need this script or if you need this video for testing the same thing. This is the result we are getting in. Finally, I'll add a backdrop so that I can mention. Before you get this script, you understand that what I've done on what place. So position, it was not having position, by the way, it has just the rotation. And also the previous one, I have enabled the settings with the position and scale to place it exactly on the anchor point, but technically I've tracked only the scale. But based on tracker properties, I will say it contains position and rotation. So that's all from my side. I'll see you in the next tutorial.